Everybody. Welcome to Sedgemoor District Council's Licensing and General Purposes Committee today on the 14th July 2021. I will now hand you over to the committee manager, Mr. Mel Hewish.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Welcome everybody to the Licensing and General Purposes meeting. Today's meeting will be an advisory meeting looking at the recommendations that are coming forward before members today. There isn't anything that actually requires a formal recommendation because we should in theory be operating as a face-to-face meeting. So in the circumstances, we've assessed the information contained in the recommendations, and as you will be potentially advising on consultation responses and then on a document that will subsequently be going out to consultation, it's felt that the meeting can continue under that manner as advisory, and then if there are any formal decisions, they can be ratified when meetings return to normal back in Bridgewater House and face-to-face. So if members are happy to proceed on that basis, we will still record the meeting. We are obviously still allowing, as demonstrated, we have the press present and members of the public, if they had so wish, could have joined the meeting, but we've not had that notification. So everything is pretty much the same as we were doing previously and prior to the expiration of the COVID regulations to allow remote meetings to take place. So a slightly different way of doing things today, but it does meet and keeps us in a position where we can at least conduct some business and give officers the ability then to respond to consultations and to start consultations. I'll stop rambling on now, just to say that if there is a technical problem, we will have to adjourn the meeting. Hopefully there won't be, but we'll see how we go through that. We'll follow the format of the agenda, and I will just ask the chairman then if she could just do the normal introductions and just ask members of the committee to confirm that they can see and hear everything. Thank you very much.
Lovely, thank you, Andrew. Right, so do we need to do introductions still? I mean, or just
yes, please. If you could just to make sure that everybody is able to at least hear everything. If they can't see, it won't be too much of a problem.
Okay, so you all know me, Polly Costello, Chairman of Licensing General Purposes Committee and Ward Member Webber on Mark, and I can see and hear everybody currently. I will start on my screen with Councillor Crowe.
I'm Barry Crowe, the Vice Chair of the Committee. I'm a Councillor for Puriton, Wollavington, and I can see and hear everybody.
Thank you. Councillor Kingham.
Right, yes, good afternoon. Yes, Councillor Stuart Kingham, Ward Member for the West Poldens, and I can hear and see all.
Lovely. Councillor Glassford.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. I am Alec Glassford, Councillor for Fairfax Ward, Bridgewater. I confirm I can see and hear everything.
Lovely, thank you. Councillor Pay.
Good afternoon, Councillor Julie Pay, Ward Councillor for the Quantock Ward. I can confirm I can hear and see everything. Thank you.
Super. Councillor Human.
Councillor Will Human, Ward Member for Markham Wedmore. I can see and hear everything clearly. Thank you.
Lovely. Councillor Barber.
Good afternoon, everybody. Councillor Barber here, representing Burnham-on-Sea Central, and I can hear and see everything. Thank you very much.
Super duper. Councillor Richards.
Good afternoon. This is Councillor Charlie Richards from Cheddar and Shipham, and yes, I can hear and see you all.
Lovely. Councillor Cordiner.
Yep, good afternoon, everybody. Councillor Cordiner from Victoria Ward, and I can see and hear everything.
Super, thank you. Councillor Betty.
Good afternoon, everyone. Councillor Anthony Betty of the King's Isle Ward, and I can hear and see everything. Thank you.
Super. Councillor Pearce.
Afternoon, everyone. Councillor Cassie Pearce, Westover Ward, Bridgewater, and I can see and hear everyone. Thank you.
Lovely, thank you. And I'm just checking on the other side, the officers. We have Mr. Weldon.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Chair. Alan Weldon, Licensing and Fraud Manager, Sedgemoor District Council. I can see and hear everything.
Lovely, thank you. Ms. Potter.
Good afternoon, Chair. Louise Potter, Electoral Services Manager, Sedgemoor District Council. I can see and hear everything. Thank you.
Lovely. Mr. Hellard.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Steve Hellard, solicitor, legal advisor to the panel this afternoon, sorry, to the committee this afternoon, and I confirm that I can see and hear everything. Thank you.
Super. Thank you, Mr. Noakes.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Richard Noakes, and I'm working with Alan's team and being responsible for the gambling policy.
Lovely. Thank you. Mr. Melhuish.
Yes, Andrew Melhuish. I'm the committee support today for the committee. I can see and hear everything, and I've also got Mr. Taylor supporting me today.
Lovely. Welcome back, Mr. Taylor. Very lovely to see you. Right, thank you. I will just bring up the agenda and then we can crack on. Okay, obviously item number 1, apologies for absence.
I haven't been notified of any apologies for absence, Chairman.
Yep. Sorry, Liz Perry's contacted me. She gives her apology. She's still unwell.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Minutes of the last meeting. To consider the minutes of the meeting held on the 8th of July 2020 and 21st of October 2020 as a correct record. Report is attached. Have I got a proposal for that?
Yeah, I think
Is
in
that right?
the circumstances, if anybody wishes to speak to the contrary, otherwise you can take it as
Super.
That everybody agrees if nobody does that.
No glaring errors. Lovely. Let's
Hold on, just one item on that. I think it's the 20th of October. I'm shown as present and absent. I actual fact was at the meeting. I did give my apologies initially because I was supposed to be on holiday on a cruise which was cancelled, of course. So I did actual fact come to the meeting. So I think that's where the confusion has arisen. I checked my diary to make sure I was there, and I was at the meeting.
The lights were on, but no one was home.
That's quite correct.
Lovely, thank you.
No.
Thank you, Councillor Crowe. Item number 3, urgent business. I don't think we've got
There is no urgent business today.
Item 4, public speaking time. We don't have any public speakers.
No.
No. Item 5, any declarations of interest? Don't think. No. Okay, lovely. Then item number 6, the 2023 boundary review. Here to consider the proposals from the Boundary Commission on initial proposals for the review of parliamentary constituency boundaries in England. The report has been attached, and I shall move on to you, Louise, if I may.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, Chair. Good afternoon, members. So you've got the report in front of you, the 2023 boundary review, initial proposals for new parliamentary constituency boundaries. Just apologies for our very valuable Cheddar and Shipham members. Anybody that's read the report, you'll notice in 3.5, I omitted Cheddar and Shipham as a ward that's going to be added to the Wells and Mendip Hills County constituency. So apologies for that. Some of the key differences in this proposed parliamentary review is that they're going to, they want to increase the southwest constituencies by 3. So currently it's 55. They want to increase it to 58. There are quite some radical changes as far as Sedgemoor is concerned as a council. If you don't mind, Chair, I'm going to just bring up the map that I showed you this morning. Bear with me just a second. And it will only just be the map. Right, can everybody see that? Lovely, thank you. So you'll see these are I don't know if you've had a chance to look at the link that was in the report, but these are the proposed boundaries in red. So you can see a Bridgewater is proposed as Bridgewater County constituency. So leaving behind all of our West Somerset neighbours, but taking in Burnham, Barrow and Bream. and then Wells and Mendip Hills County constituency proposed would take all of the Knoll ward, including East Huntsville, which is currently in Bridgewater and West Somerset, and take East and West Poldens. So it's quite a big change for us here in Sedgemoor. There have been some comments made from SLT, which I forwarded round to you all committee earlier on today. I don't know if you've had a chance to look at those. I'll just share those with you now. So the main comments are in relation to electoral management, and if we were going to make a comment back to the Boundary Commission of England, that we would urge the Commission to consider the potential changes in local government structures in Somerset, and that any boundary change respects the local government boundaries of the Somerset County, because as you can see on the proposals, this is West Somerset. It will be going into a proposed Tiverton and Minehead County constituency, so it would actually fall outside of the Somerset County. Another point that SLT, the senior leadership team, made was Hinkley Point and the location, past, present and future nuclear power stations. I'll just show you on the map. It sits around here somewhere, so would end up in a completely different constituency and out of Somerset. So they were two points that the senior leadership team wanted the committee to consider if they were considering making any proposals back to the Boundary Commission. Just another point is on the name. The Boundary Commission, they're not required. They're required by the Act to specify a name, and they generally base it on a main built-up area or town. And as you can see, proposed is Bridgewater County constituency. On our response, if we're going to make a response back, you might want to consider, maybe bringing Burnham into the name. But that's all I've got to say. So over to you. Thank you.
Lovely, thank you, Louise. Right, committee, has anyone got any questions? And can you put your hands up if you do? I need to get you back on my screen properly. Have you stopped sharing, Louise? Still got the map up. That's it. Lovely, lovely. Right, I've got Councillor Kingham first.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Louise, I'm going to say they're saying they're increasing the number of constituencies by 3. I mean, I always thought the intention was for the government to reduce the number of MPs, not increase.
Yeah, well, we've been through this. Anyone that's been on the committee, this particular committee for some time, 2011, 2013 and 2018, which all shelved. And you're right, Councillor Kingham, in all of those proposals, they chose to reduce the number of constituencies. The latest rules as part of the Parliamentary Constituencies Act 2020 retain 650 constituencies for the UK Parliament as a whole. And in England will be allocated 543. So I think they've adjusted, they're keeping the same amount of constituencies, but they've adjusted where they're going to sit within the country.
Yeah, that's interesting. from going from reducing to increasing. Yeah, thank you.
Next, I've got Kathy Pearce.
Thank you, and thank you, Louise, for your report. As things stand, the current constituency geographically is one of the larger ones in the country, isn't it? It's one of the largest constituencies. Well, that's my first question.
Is that Bridgewater and West Somerset as it is?
Yes, yes.
Okay, bear with me just a second. I'm gonna share my screen again. sorry, so you can see the numbers. Bear with me. I'm just going to bring up the existing constituencies. So part of the new Act is that no constituency can be smaller than 69,724 and not larger than 77,062. The existing Bridgewater and West Somerset constituency you can see at the moment is 85,448, and the proposed one, Bridgewater, will be 71,418.
Okay, thank you for that. Of course, Bridgewater is a growing town, so that's likely to increase. I mean, you did make a point about Hinkley Point, and your wording was, I think, will be out of Somerset, but in terms of councils, it will still fall within the county of Somerset.
It will still fall within the county of Somerset, but it will fall out of the.
It will fall out of the constituency, yes,
yeah.
but it will still be in either stronger Somerset West or One Somerset, whichever is the successful unitary. So I guess there would still be potential to have influence on matters relating to Hinkley Point. To be honest, I welcomed this development, because it's always seemed to me that for us to share a constituency with sort of the far reaches of Exmoor, I was never convinced there was sort of a natural synergy to that. Whereas with the proposals, there do seem to me to be closer links between sort of Burnham End and Bridgewater and those centres of population. So that's all the points I'd like to make at this point.
Okay, thank you. Charlie?
Thank you, Chair. I'll just make a general comment about our area up here at the far north of the district. Nobody's really talking about the fact that the proposal is to take a very large chunk of North Somerset into what is going to be called Wells and the Mendip Hills, and it's quite curious actually in that that the area that will be incorporated does fit quite well, I suppose, with Cheddar, in that this will be very much a peri-urban area to Bristol and Weston, and has large growth centres of Yatton, Congsbury, Winscombe. All the areas are, just to the north of us in North Somerset, are all being, very aggressively developed. Churchill is another one. You know from the new road that's going to be put through from the M5, the Banwell bypass is going to open up a lot of housing, and I just question how that sits with the rest of the constituency, because you're going to have this very peri-urban north and a very large hinterland of rural and quite dispersed population. I just wonder if there's been any discussion about that, amongst the senior management, the senior leadership team, and whether there are any sort of causes of concern there. Of course, all that area of Churchill, Winscombe, Yatton, right up to just the coastal area, just our side of Clevedon, those will all be beyond either a one unitary or a Western Eastern unitary. It's quite a departure from what we've had before.
Thank you, Councillor Richies. Yeah, take on board all of your points. And no, that the senior leadership team didn't mention those points.
My kind of concern is very much at the top, where Hinkley is, that stretch that's been knocked out. I still think a good chunk of that should still be kept within the kind of Bridgewater confines. Stay as it is, rather than going into Devon to the Quantock, because it's, well, with its links to Bridgewater as it's noted in all the paperwork, I think it's a bit mad that that's being taken out and put into Devon. But there we are. That's me. Anybody else? Charlie, you've got your hand up again, or have you just not put it down? I can't. Right, Louise, can I have big? Oh, thank you. Big screen back. And
Chair, can I just say, I'm sorry, I can't put my hand up because I'm on the phone. But I'll support you with regarding Hinckley. I think that is one point which we certainly ought to raise, is that point that Hinckley should be within our constituency itself and not put into Devon. I think that doesn't really make too much sense to me.
agree. Councillor Barber?
Yes, I think it's been discussed. It's a bit difficult to see on the map, but I think part of Burnham Without will actually belong to Wells and Mendip. So it literally, sort of, where the Rosewood Estate is in Burnham-on-Sea by Tesco's. I think part of that, half of it will be along with Bridgewater, which I mirror Councillor Kathy Pearce's comments that I think there's more connection Burnham-on-Sea and Bridgewater together really than being with Mendip. But I think a small chunk of Burnham Without will actually belong in Mendip now, which again is, I think it goes along with Brent Knoll and that.
I thought it was the whole of Knoll going over to Wells.
Yes, and there is a small
Burnham. I thought Burnham Without was going over the other way. I didn't think it was still being kind of. What's the answer to that, Louise?
Yeah, you are right, Councillor Barber. At the moment, Burnham Without is in a very odd situation because they're made up of 3 small polling districts and they're all in different wards. So Burnham Without Brew is actually in Burnham Central. So poor old Burnham Without will be split constituencies as they are split wards.
Oh God, what a mess. Okay.
I know. We've got Burnham, Burnham Without Brew is in Burnham Central, and then Burnham Without Marine is in Highbury and Burnham Marine Ward. So those 2 will both be in Bridgewater County constituency. And then you've got Burnham Without Edith Mead, which is in the Knoll Ward. So they're already made up. The parish council is already made up of 3 separate wards.
Okay. Anybody else got any other comments or anything they want to say or add? Obviously, Louise, you've heard.
Only on the name, really, and I think Bridgewater and Burnham, to me, would seem to make sense, as there was a lot of development around the Burnham-Highbridge area. It does seem to me to make sense to have it as Bridgewater and Burnham.
Okay. No other comments? Okay, super. Thank you, Louise, for that.
Thank you, Chair. I'll pull something together, and as per Andrew's proposals, I'll ask the assistant director to send the approval. That was Andrew, wasn't it?
Yes, sorry. I'll just step in now. I think it looks as though as an advisory committee today, you are wishing to make some representations based on the comments that you've raised today, and particularly about the links with Bridgewater and Hinckley, and also the name of Bridgewater and Burnham. So it would be sensible to using powers under the delegation, so to delegate authority to the Assistant Director for Legal and Governance, which is Melanie, but ultimately that will come down to Louise as the responsible officer, to submit a consultation response, and for that consultation response to be submitted following Louise going away and writing up the various elements of that, and then just consulting yourself and the deputy of the committee to make sure you're happy before that submission goes forward. So I understand the submission has to be made by early August. So if you're happy with proceeding that way and nobody's speaking to the contrary, then we can proceed under those arrangements.
Yep, super. Thank you. Okay, thank you for your time, Louise.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.
You too. Bye. Right, moving on to item number 7 on the agenda, we have got the gambling policy 2022 to 2025, and we have the reporting officer, Alan Weldon, and his backup is Richard Noakes. Over to you, Alan.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, members. Good afternoon, everybody. Today, as the report quite rightly says, the matter before you is the mandatory 3-yearly review of the gambling policy, which is contained as a requirement within the Gambling Act of 2005. The purpose of bringing it for you today is this is a standard officer rewrite of the policy that is due to go out to consultation for 9 to 10 weeks very soon, and we'll be back before you in committee in all likelihood in October. We have to get it through full council in time for January 22 for it to come in. So today really is an opportunity for you to see the policy, for us to explain any changes that we've made, for also any amendments to be made before it goes out to consultation. And finally, then obviously it will come back before you. So the intention today is to kind of explain the changes so that when it comes back to you in October, hopefully that part you understand and you're able to then consider the consultation responses. In terms of the current position, my colleague, Mr. Noakes, is now working for the council. He is formerly of the Gambling Commission, however, so it is very useful to have him on board for this review. And he's undertaken a thorough review of the policy, taking into account, as it says, as you will see in paragraph 3.1, the Gambling Commission's guidance to local authorities, the relevant legislation, the existing policy, and also the way in which the Gambling Commission is looking to drive local regulation going forward. It appears clear for the upcoming gambling review, the Gambling Commission have got a lot of things at the moment to consider, not least online gambling, as you probably realise. So it will be left to us to largely deal with the local regulation in terms of permits and licences in our district. We've also taken into account the experience of officer-led inspections. We did undertake a number of inspections until the pandemic interrupted those, and we intend to restart those shortly in terms of going into premises and going through all the parts of the policy that you will see, and some things that have been changed too. You will see essentially 2 appendices attached today. One is Appendix A, which is the current policy. I don't intend to refer to that today. It was merely put in there, obviously, for illustrative purposes to remind you what policy we have in place until next January. And I intend, therefore, to refer in a second or two to Appendix B. You're probably aware that usually when we come to committee and we're changing policies, we have one document that clearly shows all the changes that have been made and crossings out, etc. This is a fundamentally changed document. And frankly, if we'd have shown you that, I think it would have driven you to distraction to follow it and me to confusion in presenting it. So hopefully the clean copies of before and after, so to speak, will show you what changes have been made, and we'll certainly concentrate on the after document, Appendix B. We've looked to improve links within that document, and the buzzwords are we've made it more robust, and we've also tried to future-proof it with the changes that are proposed. So hopefully, although it's a longer document, it's gone from 27 pages to 46. There is good reason for that we can show you today. The equality implications, none at this stage, because basically vulnerable groups have been identified within the Gambling Act, with particular reference to the objective that we have more control of locally, which is protecting children and other vulnerable persons from being harmed or exploited by gambling. That's basically the crux of where the policy lies in a lot of places. Simply the option today for you is to consider the draft policy document and, if appropriate, make any changes before the document is subject to a period of formal consultation. That will be a wide consultation, including public consultation and internal consultation within groups in the council. Corporate priorities, I think it's important to say that it gives us a robust regulation of gambling. And it's important to say businesses need plenty of guidance and signposting at the moment, especially relevant in relation to economic recovery as the pandemic situation hopefully recedes. And I think that's what the previous policy may have been lacking. At the moment, we try and signpost businesses to policies more so that they can see what's required of them from the very start. And we think the redraft does cover that. Moving on to other comments, I think finance and legal comments obviously are self-explanatory. We do have a set of statutory consultees, but we do consult very widely far beyond that. Health and well-being is worth mentioned. Our inspection, as it says, is fundamentally focused on the protection of children and vulnerable people from harm. And the acts and codes of practice are already robust in dealing with that. And we think we've upgraded the policy to fit in line with that. Risk management implications, pretty self-explanatory. I think it's worth mentioning the economic development implications of paragraph 11 of the report. It should give better clearly defined guidance for operators to effectively judge what will be required of them. So it's a useful signposting tool. For those of you that sat through the lengthy taxi policy debate of some time ago, it clearly became a document we could refer people to. Although it's relatively painful to go through, I think we can say from all our points of view, it did give us a firm document that we can send people to. And this is kind of along the same route with the gambling policy. And it does also help compliant operators to continue and develop and grow their businesses, which, as I've said, is never been more important than now, really. So in conclusion of the report, at least, it's for the committee to consider the draft policy and make any changes deemed appropriate before the consultation. Moving down, I'm aware that I could share my screen here, but you might find it more useful for you to be able to scan through your own copies. But if anybody needs me to present my screen, I'm happy to do so. The first document, which I think you'll find on your page counter of the whole document at the beginning, at the very top, you will see page 53 of 138. I hope you can see that on the page counter at the top of the document. I don't propose to go through Appendix A, so I'm suggesting that we scan down to page 79, which is Appendix B, and start going through that. So we give you a few minutes, including myself, to get down to page 79. Sorry, this is taking a while, for me at least. And we should be there soon. Is everybody there? It should be the first page of Appendix B, and it will have the new logo and the title of the policy on it. In terms of introducing, like I've said, some of the things we've done is we've increased links into the policy and introduced links into the policy as part of the digital engagement. We think that's a good way forward. As people read the policy online, they can, gain access to the links to get the information as they go through. If I can ask you to just scan through the contents pages, and if we can focus, and I'm going to refer now, if it helps, and I think it will as we go along, to the page numbers just on this particular document. They're contained, as you will see, at the bottom right-hand corner of each page on this policy document. And I'm looking to start on page 4 at the beginning, which is paragraph 1 and 1.1 statement of licensing policy. Now, at this stage, just a reminder, guys, that I know you're dealing a lot with Licensing Act objectives, as we deal with that every day. The Gambling Act doesn't fall upon committee, but very often, because we don't have subcommittees as a result of applications with objections, they're few and far between, and we haven't had licensing reviews for some time. So just a reminder, this policy is driven by the 3 objectives. First one, preventing gambling from being a source of crime and disorder, being associated with crime or disorder, or being used to support crime. Predominantly there, a prime example is money laundering. That's the kind of thing they're looking at there. Secondly, ensuring that gambling is conducted in a fair and open way, primarily the responsibility of the Gambling Commission at present, but crucially, the one we've already touched on, protecting children and other vulnerable persons from being harmed or exploited by gambling. So that's the one I think you'll find we can control locally in a lot more ways in terms of our inspections and what we expect from operators. And we firmed up a lot on that in terms of this policy. It's our belief. The other key issue to mention here is that the licensing authority has to aim to permit gambling. So the aim is to permit gambling unless there's good reason to do so. So there is a balance to be had in that clearly there are vulnerable people that need protecting. Similarly, Gambling is a pastime that is legitimate, and we have the aim to permit as a council. So with that in mind, and I will stop for any questions in a sec. There's a couple more to go through that might be worth. I'll only try and concentrate on the major changes rather than drag you through everything. So in terms of the introduction, it's worth mentioning there was an introduction, and part of the introduction rather has been taken out, which is the bit that relates to Hinkley Point. I think the information on it was slightly out of date. So we are going to consult obviously with the major projects team and beyond. And so I would expect there to be a paragraph amongst the consultation that is up to date regarding Hinkley Point and its relevance to the authority and the area. So some of you may have noticed that's missing. It was out of date, we've taken it out, but it's fully expected to be before you in October as part of the consultation response. Moving on to paragraph 2.4. So we're missing a fair bit now that hasn't changed very much. I think you'll find it's on page 11, and I'm frantically scrambling down, apologies. So we're looking at page 11 of this document. And you'll find it actually at the very bottom, the title is, that may have to be pushed over, but it's 2.4, Gambling Prevalence and Social Responsibility. Now, having touched on the vulnerable issues that are there and the people that are vulnerable and we need to protect within our communities, we've added in here the gambling related harm issues, which hasn't been in there before. If you see from the start of page 12, you will see that the first paragraph defines the effects. The second one is kind of centered on those who might be affected. And the third paragraph starts describing the fact there is a social responsibility code, which is linked to local area risk assessments that those of you that did the policy last time would know we introduced or were introduced. If I can take you down that page, you'll see 4 bullet points, which, if you like, underline these. The first is provision of information on gambling responsibly. Goes without saying, every operator is expected to provide documentation for people to pick up if they are struggling and how to signpost them to help. Customer interaction is the second one. That's key because I know some of you would have been involved in the B2 machines in the betting shops consultation some time ago. And it's very important that if a customer shows signs of being frustrated while he's in, for example, a betting establishment, then it's clear that the staff must liaise with them. They must find out what's wrong. They must suggest breaks and the fact that maybe they need to stop. And that is important, and we would expect policies, and most certainly do have policies aligning with that. Couple of things we'll mention. Layout of premises is kind of a bit later on, and there's a big chunk that we can go through briefly that establishes layouts of premises and what we expect to see. And finally, I think it's important that we've got self-exclusion in there, which enables vulnerable people to actually say, I do not want to bet, I do not want to gamble, do not let me gamble in your establishment. Now, we touched on that in the policy, but this kind of just reinforces exactly what operators are required to do as part of this process, where people can say, do not let me gamble in these premises. Anybody have any questions at this stage on any of that so far? Councillor Pearce?
Thank you. Knowing the best way to let you know. Thank you for the report. I have to say, I only received the pack for this yesterday, and it's really difficult to read through so much information in such a short space of time. But I do thank you for taking us through the policy, because that is helping. I'm really pleased to see the social welfare elements included. I was just wondering though, for those in the shops at the time, that can be quite a difficult thing to do, to sort of deter or persuade somebody to stop their gambling. And I just wondered, and it may be in the report and I've missed it, but is there sources of help notified within betting shops for those who may be trying to reduce you know, they're gambling. It's making sources of support easily accessible as well. And I wasn't sure what we did as an authority around that, or what the betting shops could or should be doing. And then finally, because of the social responsibility and the fact that there are occasions when families homes are possessed or they lose their tenancies because of gambling, do we keep any records to monitor that at all?
The final point is we wouldn't have them in licensing as such. I do believe community safety, certainly in one of the teams, do deal with that, and it has been looked at. Yeah, I'm sorry I can't give you any more detail on that today, but yeah, certainly elsewhere within the council that can be monitored. You've touched on it, and we'll go on to talk about location a bit in a minute, because I've only done the social responsibility bit, but location is important. And what you're saying is, for instance, in an area of high deprivation, that needs to be considered if an application came in. So yes, those things are considered elsewhere in the council. And kind of what you said before about how it's dealt with in the premises, yes, that the inspections we've done up to the pandemic at least, and hopefully soon to start again, clearly show there are good policies in place with our license holders. Gaming machines was an issue in betting establishments. That's since been reduced by a significant reduction in the stake levels. And prior to that, we do ask members of staff on an unnotified visit, how would you deal with somebody that shows these signs? So we do test it. We also look at their policies. You're probably aware a lot of the high street premises that you see are national names, and a lot of them have got very good national policies in place. Rest assured about that. Our test is, however, how do local staff translate those policies into action on the ground? And that's where we come in and test it. I hope that answers the question. I'm sorry if it hasn't, but I'm happy to take another one on that if needs be.
Sorry, can I just come back? Just really one very quick one. It was about the sources of support for those.
Sorry, yes, I missed that one,
right.
didn't I? Sorry, I
That's all right.
apologise. Yeah, part of the issue, and it's kind of touched on in the policies, is you're right. They have to have documentation in there that would point towards a source of help if needed. Self-exclusion covers it if you've come in and said, I don't want to gamble, don't let me come in and gamble. That's one element. But for those that haven't engaged in that, there is signposting required to GamCare and organisations that obviously would help with that. So yes, that's part of the test, and it forms part of the inspection process too. We have to be satisfied there's enough signposting for that to be in the shop. Absolutely.
I've got Councillor Cordner and then Councillor Kingham after that.
Yeah, my question was about location, so I don't know if you want me to wait until you've gone through that.
If you fire at me now, I'll try and relate to it a bit later. Does that help?
It's
Yeah.
just mainly about, as you mentioned, that most betting shops are placed in areas where there is social deprivation, and I'm just wondering if the council is going to limit, because at the moment, if you walk through Bridgewater down to Eastover, you know, there's many betting shops, yet if I were to go to a more affluent area, I'm sure there wouldn't be. So I'm just wondering if the council is going to have any policy on limiting, because obviously we can put measures in place to help people when they're in trouble, but if we try to limit the, you know, if we kind of stop it before it starts, so to speak. So I'm just wondering if there's going to be a policy in place to limit the amount of, because, you know, I think studies have shown where there are betting shops, it leads to social problems, you know, and obviously we do have quite a few. Just wondering if there's a policy to limit those.
I'll refer that to Richard in a sec, but if I can reply from my understanding, now we can control it in terms of existing premises that are already there in the inspection process, and should there be a major issue, there is a review process like the Licensing Act that be gone through to test and that would come, you know, that would come before you to test the legitimacy of that business continuing on the grounds. And there is some, we'll talk about that in a sec very briefly about licensing reviews. In terms of new applications, however, the test would be, as part of the application process, there would be the ability for objections to be made in a similar way that the Licensing Act is, in terms of saying it has to be linked, and we will go on to talk about that, but there is the option to object to a premises based potentially on location. But Richard will probably have more of an idea in that. Can I bring you in, Richard, please?
Yes, thank you, Alan. In response to your question, Councillor Cordner, I believe there was some talk some time ago about some change in the planning regulations about requiring a change of use application for when say a retail premises or a cafe was converted into a betting premises. I'm not sure how far that actually went forward, or indeed whether it was specific to individual licensing authorities or whether it was a general proposal. So there may be something in the planning somewhere, but I'm not sure where it went from a couple of years ago.
And I think to add to that, I think that we can't have a policy to restrict necessarily, because we've got to, as we say, we've got to aim to permit gambling where possible, and businesses can apply, but then the application process and possible objections are built into that. And that could result in a subcommittee that would enable councillors to consider those things. I think that's a way of controlling it. To my knowledge, we cannot have a policy that would restrict it.
So you wouldn't be able to say we can only have so many per square mile. That's not possible.
I'm pretty sure we can't. No, it has to be each case on its merits, effectively.
Okay, got Councillor Kingham up next.
Yes, thank you, Polly. Yes, Alan, I mean, I will admit that I haven't gone through your document completely yet, but you may have a section which covers it. Obviously, with more people staying at home, doing more things online, you can do more things with your mobile phone these days, gambling, etc. How can you sort of tackle this problem? Because obviously it's something that you don't actually see happening, because it's people are doing it in their home, and you don't always have a control over it.
Yes, Councillor, certainly it is a major concern at the moment. Well, unfortunately, we can't have an input onto that. Our remit is strictly premises based. So the Gambling Commission are the overarching, if you like, responsible authority for considering online gambling. And that's one of the things they are having to concentrate on at the moment, to also consider the advertising you see around sporting events and in breaks in sporting events. So it is a major concern. We can't influence it, and we can't refer to it in our policy, as we have no responsibility. It is the Gambling Commission. But partly, I think, as Richard's identified in the policy, I think those are the things the Gambling Commission are needing to concentrate on, which leaves us to regulate the local stuff.
Yeah, I
Thank
think it's worth saying as well, Councillor Kingham, that there is an ever-increasing incidence of seamless transfer between online and premises-based gambling. And indeed, many of the larger betting operators already have online wallet systems where you can load credit online, spend it in the shop, and vice versa. So I think it is something that, whilst absolutely, as Alan says, the online world is very much the premise of the Gambling Commission, I think going forwards, it may well be that, you know, we see some of that in the premises itself, and need to be aware of that within the premises.
Yeah, thank you.
Great. Don't think any more questions at this stage. Do you want to carry on, Alan?
Thank you, Chair. We can now skip a few pages, you might be glad to know, because a lot of this element is unchanged. If I can refer you next to page 15, which is paragraph 3.3. We've it is pretty much self-explanatory. Provisional statements refer to businesses that might not quite yet be ready to be in situ for gambling. So, for instance, premises that aren't built yet or are not complete. will enable them to put in a provisional statement application, really, rather than a full application in the first instance. Can be used to test the waters, for example. So we've made reference to that. Next, licensing reviews. We've kind of touched on that, I think, with Councillor Cordoner's question on the way of controlling premises that are generating issues is, a last resort, but it is there, is for a licensing review to be triggered. Now, what we've done, as you will see from paragraph 3.4, we've got the standard big triggers. They're obvious stuff and serious. There's serious things in there. There's 9 points. What we've added this time is at the foot, as you will see at page 15, due consideration will be given to all relevant representations unless they fit the following. So what we've done is we've said these are the grounds for the review, but we're now adding we're adding a direction, if you like, for people who may want to submit an application for a review. We're saying what can't be done: frivolous, vexatious, irrelevant, repetitive. We're mentioning an interested party, which we've added to one of the appendices. And we've also at the bottom with the bullet points referred to examples when we can't consider it. So again, that's more of a, if you like, it's less of a signpost for businesses, excuse me, more of a signpost for the public or anybody that would like to trigger a review. So there are controls in place for some of the issues that Councillor Cordner referred to earlier. We're now on to local standards, which has seen a bit of a rejig, and there's a few things in there I think it would be useful to touch on. For instance, on page 17, I beg your pardon, I've missed one. Where are we? Page 17. We have mentioned location, which I think was referred to earlier by Councillor Pearce and Councillor Cordner. Now, one of the things we have to take into account, the council is aware that demand issues cannot be considered with regard to the location of premises, but that considerations in terms of the objectives are relevant to the decision making. So again, an application can come in from anywhere, but then it falls upon us as part of the application process to look at these issues, particularly in line with the objectives. We've kind of said the areas that will cause concern, and indeed the Eastover ward was mentioned in terms of there being a lot of premises. We've given a list of things we would consider on those bullet points, which hopefully are useful in signposting people areas of concern. We then go on to plans, which wasn't in there before, but we feel that businesses need a look at what they need to give us in terms of a plan. Layouts we'll touch on a bit later, because that's where there are significant changes. That's basically it for that section. Local risk assessments at 4.5, which you may have scrolled down to on page 18, that is largely unchanged. We've put in some useful links that weren't in there before so people can access that information. But we did, as you recall, if you were on the committee last time, we went through local area risk assessments in a lot of detail. Much of it hasn't changed, and it does refer to some of the location issues that have already been touched on. So if we skip that and we now head to page 21, and we're nearly halfway, so please hang in there. If we skip to page 21, there's a small entry for door supervisors there at 4.7. And again, this is relevant to some of the things that have already been mentioned. Where premises attract disorder or be subject to attempts at unauthorised access, then the entrances to the premises must be controlled by a door supervisor and attach such conditions as may be appropriate to the licence. Another way of controlling issues on a specific area. If I touch briefly now on material amendment to premises. Now, one of the things in that, as you will recall, some of you, from when we looked at gaming machines and the use in premises, it mentions in the last paragraph privacy screening or boothing to machines. Now, at the time, premises thought it would allow a person using gaming machines effectively to have a more private experience and not be overlooked. Our argument was, well, that's not great if we're saying to people, you've got to supervise the use of these gaming machines and make sure that people aren't acting in a way that would suggest it's affecting them. So again, we've mentioned in the policy that if they want to use those, they need to make a variation application, and it would then come under scrutiny, certainly by yourselves at subcommittee if necessary. So it's an example really that we've tightened up on that. I think I think I'll stop at that stage because I've got a big bit coming up, which is the final stretch, so to speak. Is there any questions on any of that section at all? Thank you. Okay, I can't see anybody, so I'll crack on with this. If I can refer you next to the Unlicensed Family Entertainment Centre, which is, I think, on page 23, and is paragraph 4.11. As we scan down, and it's at the very start of page 23. Now, these weren't referred to much in the old policy. We've tightened up on that. Effectively, unlicensed family entertainment centre gaming machine permits are a 10-year arcade, for want of a better phrase, permit. It's not a license because they only have category D machines, which basically are for children to play. So they're your standard entertainment centre, not to be mixed up with a family entertainment centre, which is a license, which also includes adult machines. And to give you an idea, in terms of category D machines, if we're looking at a money prize, so a slot machine, the stakes are a maximum of 10p and a maximum payout of £5, as opposed to the next machine up, which is a category C and an adult machine, which is £1 in and £100 out maximums. So these are your children's centres. There are also crane grab machines. You've all seen them, I'm sure, penny pushers, etc. All those are category Ds. And if a premises only offers category Ds, it's a permit, not a license. And we feel that because these are targeted at children, particularly in this day and age, and with an eye on the objective, we need to be more robust in how these operators run these places, considering it is a permit. We still conduct inspections as an authority into these premises, even though they're not a license. But we felt that these paragraphs on that page that you will see kind of put more emphasis on an applicant to consider many areas. So if I can refer you through to page 24, there's a list of things first that the applicants will be expected to demonstrate to us. Doesn't form part of the statutory application process, but we feel this needs to be built in. So we've taken the decision to include it. You will see a list of things here. There's a difference between will and may. For instance, the may measures that you'll see, such measures may include enhanced criminal record checks for staff. Now that would be a DBS effectively, because predominantly, after all, these permits are considering children playing the machines. And it may well be, as Richard has put in here, the first opportunity for a child to be exposed to gambling legitimately. So as we scroll down, you'll see some of the things and supporting documents we're asking for. We've significantly increased what we'll ask for, but we think it is in keeping with a need to protect children and vulnerable people. So I'd welcome any comments on that at any stage at the end, but we have gone and obviously upgraded that significantly. Permits, I won't go into great detail with. If you go to paragraph 4.2 on page 25, excuse me, just a word about alcohol license premises and gaming machine permits. If you have an alcohol on sales license, you are permitted to notify us of up to 2 category C or D machines. Remember, C is adult, D is not. Children can play those. If you would like any more, you can apply for a permit. We did a bit of work pre-pandemic. In fact, it was bang on the pandemic. It was January to March last year, where we conducted a lot of visits to ensure that pubs made sure that they supervise the use of their gaming machines. It's something maybe that alcohol license premises worry about least because of all the alcohol tests, but we kind of felt it necessary to bring it to the forefront and just explain to them you do have to control your gaming machines. So we have got a bit of work in there. We've also put a line in there that says if you've got a license, say for late night refreshment, this doesn't entitle you to have a gaming machine in your takeaway. There have been instances before where that's happened, so it's definitely in the policy now. Much of the following pages refer to gambling activity which wasn't referred to before. So gaming permits, registrations, temporary use notices, and occasional use notices. I don't really intend to go into those in any detail. They're pretty much self-explanatory, I think you'll agree. And obviously, if anyone's got any questions about these at the end, I'm happy to take questions. But they basically were things that were either not referred to in the previous policy or only referred to in passing. And if we want to make this a signposted policy that people can look at and go, ah, I see what they want, then that's why it's in there. So if I can refer you through next to page 31. So give me a bit of time to get there, apologies. Then we've got the definition of premises, which again brings more of a kind of a narrowing down of the policy to be able to say this is what we expect and this is what we see. And in particular, it kind of explains about layouts. Now, we've had issues before with layouts in premises, and there are several premises that have got 2 or 3 different things in them. For instance, you've probably seen you've got the arcade at the front, which will be the unlicensed family entertainment centre, just full of category D machines for the kids. And you might have an adult gaming centre at the back that's screened off and over 18s only. Now, there is an expectation that the separation distances between the two are adequate and not just lip service, so that kids or people that shouldn't be in the adult gaming centre can't just wander in. We've tried to really crack down on that. We've had premises before that have used separation areas like different coloured carpet with a coffee machine in and maybe a change machine in that was no more than a metre or so wide as a definition area between moving from one to the other. Now, obviously, we feel that's inappropriate. Amongst other things, children shouldn't be able to see gambling taking place in any other environment except an unlicensed family entertainment centre. So there has to be safeguards in place to make sure they're not exposed to gambling. And that's what we're kind of looking at here. So it gives some explanation about how premises are, how separation is included, how we don't want people drifting from one gambling area into another or from one gambling area into a non-gambling area. So there is a lot of guidance in there on that. There's also a bit of clarification on each premises, and it mentions casinos, it mentions adult gaming centres, betting shops, tracks, and so on. As you scroll down, you'll see that. So we've kind of tried to separate it to make it people aware of what they can do. And that's kind of finalised really at the start of page 34 with some examples of separation areas that would be acceptable to us. So if a premises license holder is thinking of building a building from scratch, then he knows what the layout needs to be. If he's moved into a building and he's going to change of use to gambling, he's going to know what changes he's going to need to make it robust enough for us. So just to refer you then to the layout plans on page 34. I hope that gives you an idea of where we're going with that into page 35. Next, basically, and we're coming to the end now, from page 35 onwards, we've got a definition again of each premises. Now, a lot of it's repetitive, but we felt we've got to separate it because there are differences and nuances between each premises license. So we've got a defined list of what businesses need to do in each case, and we didn't have that before. So I think this is very prescriptive and exactly what we need to get the detail right for businesses and for the regulation of that as well. So you'll see as you scan through, it mentions we go on to family entertainment centres, bingo premises licenses. There are also it mentions machines in that because there are machine allocations with bingo licenses. And we finally get through to travelling fares, vulnerable persons we've touched on, and finally the appendices. As you will see, excuse me scrolling, Appendix A is unchanged, B is unchanged, C is unchanged. Where are we? E is a new one, which is interested parties. We've clarified what an interested party is in order to make a representation for a review, for example, or to make an objection. I think that'll be helpful. And as we scroll through, Appendix F is a hard-hitting appendix. And it is one that's been included with many policies now. Child sexual exploitation and trafficking of children and young people. It gives an explanation, and crucially, it gives a bit of direction on where people need to go if they identify that this is going on. And it could be a betting establishment. So the words in there are hard hitting. I think the argument is it should be. It will go through to consultation with our own safeguarding team and also the Safeguarding Board for Children. So there will be the opportunity for them to add or amend anything as part of the consultation process. Finally, I hear you say, it's finished. So thanks for your time. I appreciate that. I hope that was useful to give you a heads up. And obviously it will enable you then just to look at the consultation responses next time, which hopefully will be useful. And just really any further questions. Thank you.
I see that Julie's got her hand up. Go ahead, Julie. Cordner.
Yeah, sorry, you might have mentioned this, Alan, but you know, I might have missed it.
Right.
Once somebody's got a license, is that in place for, you know, if they don't do anything that contravenes that license, is that in place forever, or do they have to reapply? Does it go back to consultation? How does that work? And I'm sorry if you have mentioned that.
No, that's okay. I haven't actually. So yeah, that's a good question. I mean, in terms of the license, yes, it's the same as the Licensing Act. It's in place. So the trigger points are the review system. We use the inspection system. Well, actually, there's two things. The inspection regime that we undertake, and when Richard was with the Gambling Commission, we certainly did jointly, is quite robust, and we can challenge what they're doing at present and suggest improvements. There is something called a local area risk assessment, which I glossed over, but each premises is expected to, that's the thing that changes. So if there's any change in the locality, for instance, there could be an ATM put next door, there could be a rehabilitation centre for, you know, vulnerable people in the area, then they're expected to change their local area risk assessment and tell us what they think the risk now is and how it's changed, and also what they're putting in place to mitigate that risk. So I think there are controls, but the ultimate thing is a licensing review if nothing is taken on that.
Kathy?
Thank you. Yes, thank you for taking us through. As a newbie to licensing, it's really good to know that this policy is more robust than it was previously. So that's really good news. I just wondered on page 24, and you said about there are some things that will be required and such measures may include. And I just wonder, because the success or not of the operations will depend on good management, won't it? And I just want can you explain why those, because they're seem to me pretty hefty things, that the measures that may include are the enhanced criminal record check, and things about measures as regards suspected truant school children who are truanting, and appropriate training. Why are they may and not will?
I think it's enough for us to say as part of the application process, we're going to insist on this list. The mays are things that I think we could use if we had to. So if it commits us to doing it every time, as you say, the things that are may are kind of scaling it up a bit. So it gives officers a discretion to apply them if they think it's appropriate in that particular case. And you mentioned actually about the truancy thing. If there is a school nearby, that should be in their local area risk assessment. So that risk should be tested in that document. And we do from time to time ask for a spot check on local area risk assessments. In fact, if we have unnotified gambling visits, we quite often ask to see it. So hopefully that does that answer the question in that respect? The maze kind of are what we can do if we need to up the ante, but if we made them musts, we'd have to apply them to every premises where it might not be appropriate.
Yeah, thank you. That does it. I think I'd just like to see a must on everything, to be honest. But you have explained it, and thank you for that. Thank you.
Stuart?
Yeah, thanks, Polly. Obviously, being a member of the development committee, getting a lot of HMOs, are you sort of tightening up on legislation for that type of thing?
In terms of licensing the HMOs, yeah. I'm sorry, I've got to swerve that one because that's the responsibility of private sector housing. So, but a lot of people think it is us. It's not. It's actually dealt with the housing team. So technically, you could argue that if there's a high concentration of HMOs in the area, that should also be in the local area risk assessment. So yes, it would touch us as a licensing team, but probably only in the recognition of the risks.
Julie?
Yeah, sorry, just going back to Councillor Pearce's maze, and again, forgive me if I've misunderstood something. So if there was an operation where children were allowed to go in and use facilities, is it the operators may need a DBS, or they would definitely need a DBS?
I think the DBS thing is it's kind of something I think that might be the proof of that one might be in the consultation, only because if you think about it, yeah, we thought, well, DBSs need to be applied to people, if you like, that would deal with children. Now, if the applicant happens to be a manager or the owner of the premises, I think you're referring to the permits, aren't you? The unlicensed family entertainment centres.
Yeah.
It's a permit, and there is a way we can revoke a permit, certainly part way down. Don't forget, it's not a license that's in perpetuity, it's a 10-year permit. But if things went wrong, we could revoke that and put action onto that. So, but again, I think the DBSs is a tricky one, because if it's the manager who's never there, it's almost pointless. So would we expect them, and is it reasonable to expect them to CRB check every member of staff that might be walking a floor on a UFEC? If you see what I mean.
It is. It is, because if you wait for something to happen, that could already be a life ruined. So I would say, if a DBS, you know, where children are, you know, where children are going to be frequenting, possibly alone even, then I would say that a DBS is very important.
I'm just looking on which page it is, because I've lost my way completely. I think it's 23, isn't it? You're referring to with the UFECs. Sorry, that's the unlicensed entertainment centres. Yes, I mean, we can look at that as part of the consultation. Certainly, that's something that could be brought in. It's the first time it's been mentioned, so it will be interesting to see what you know, what type of thing it is. I've lost my way completely on that, but I'll have to go from memory. Yes, so the may doesn't commit us. It gives us the option to consider it. Whether you think it should be a basic requirement is something that can be fed into the consultation, I think.
I think where children are concerned, I mean, if you think every adult that works in a school needs a DBS, and within that school, that's quite a protected environment, really, isn't it? You know, it would be difficult for, you know, things to, well, you know, hopefully, but if you're thinking of, I don't know, my kind of thinking of a, you know, a video games arcade or something, I think you've got much more scope for something to go wrong. So I would say a DBS in those kind of environments should be a basic requirement, really.
Okay. In terms of, sorry, Andrew, can I just ask a question then? Can that be added as part of the consultation today, or in view of the nature of the meeting, do we have to feed that into the consultation process? Sorry, I'm a bit unsure about that.
No, you can agree to add that in. That's not a problem at all.
Which case, if you will allow me to frantically catch up, because my screen actually decided to switch off and it takes me back to page 1 again. So bear with, I'll just find the page it relates to. Yeah, here we are. So the May enhanced criminal record check for staff. Now, it doesn't have to, sorry, the point is it doesn't have to be an enhanced one. It can be a basic one because that would pick up any previous convictions. So that might be a matter of debate. Appropriate measures, staff training as regards suspected truant children. I think that will be easily done. We could write that in. Appropriate measures training for staff as regards unsupervised very young children. Yeah, I don't think that is an issue. I mean, I don't know, I'll bring in Richard on this because he did a bit of research onto that in terms of what might be a useful steer as to whether we go enhanced or basic in that respect. Are you able to help me out with that one, Richard, please?
Yes, Alan, it's a very good point that Councillor Gordon and Councillor Pearce make, I think, is that, but I will say that the approach does vary considerably across different licensing authorities. And indeed, you know, the requirements for sort of DBS checks, for example, are a requirement for North Devon Council, but for some other Devon authorities, they haven't included a must. So it does vary from licensing authority to licensing authority. Many authorities simply don't really reference unlicensed family entertainment centres, as you would imagine, because many don't have them. You know, they tend to be a seaside issue rather than anything else. That's where the majority of them are, seaside holiday parks and so on and so forth. But I think it's a very good point that you make. I think it is a question whether we would require a standard DBS check as a minimum, and I think that's I wouldn't think that would be unreasonable at all. I'm not sure about how far we could go in terms of requiring an enhanced check. I think obviously that's something we need to just look at in terms of when we are able to request an enhanced check as opposed to a standard check. But I wouldn't see any reason why we couldn't ask for a standard DBS check to be made. The only potential difficulty would be is, of course, that would be applicable at the point of application for the permit, and then that permit lasts for 10 years. So we may need to think about how we would manage that over the 10-year period. So it's something, Alan, we might need to think about is, do we put a sentence in there requiring operators of these types of premises to notify us of any material changes, you know, as soon as reasonably practical, or words to that effect? Because obviously you can have a DBS check now, the same premises could be running in 10 years time and all sorts of things could have gone on and they wouldn't have necessarily been picked up unless we have something in there that says that the operators need to tell us that things have happened.
Thanks,
Right.
Richard. Yeah, I mean, basically an enhanced criminal record check would also show information from the police. So it's more expensive. It could be prohibitive, I suppose, whereas a basic DBS check would give us previous convictions. And they're easier to get CRB checks as they used to be. And that probably might be for the committee to consider that becomes a will before we go out to consultation. Again, it's the management. They are 10-year, so Richard's entirely right. There is no mechanism for checking throughout the period, although we could. There's no reason to suggest we couldn't. There is a high turnover of staff, which is another thing, but you might say, well, that's a risk actually, so we need to cover it. So if I could refer back to members to maybe decide whether we go for basic and then the May is enhanced, maybe, I don't know.
I've got Charlie Richards and then Julie again.
I was going to go on to a slightly different issue, so if Julie's talking about the same issue, I'll let her go first.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sorry, just looking at the thing with the enhanced DBS is people are able to register for the update service, which is quite a reasonable cost, which can be checked at any point by anyone. And the thing with the enhanced DBS, it shows like barred lists, barred occupations that people could maybe not be allowed to work in. I don't know. For me, I just think if you're working in a school, you need an enhanced DBS. If you're working in an arcade where children are going to be frequenting, possibly without adults, for me, I just think they also should require an enhanced DBS. Sorry.
No, that's okay. I mean, are we okay to decide that today, Chair? That we'll change it from a must to a may to a will. We'll add it to the list above, if you like, rather than such measures may include. Yeah.
Yep. Perfect.
Yep. Okay.
Great.
Thank you. We'll do that. Thank you.
Good points. Kathy, are you want to talk about the similar thing, or is it something different?
It was just to echo Councillor Cordner, really. You know, in public services, an enhanced DBS is the norm where children are present, and it seems to me, if we're serious about protecting vulnerable children, and there will be vulnerable children in these establishments, then that could make a lot of difference and show that we are serious to the operators as well.
Yeah.
So I would support if it needs a seconder, then I would like to second.
Okay, lovely. Councillor Richards.
Thank you. Can I go back to paragraph 4.7, which I think you said, Alan, has been introduced about door supervisors? And reading this, as somebody, completely outside of this sort of work, I don't know if I completely follow this, because it says where premises attract disorder. Well, if they attract disorder, we wouldn't license them, would we? I mean, I can see that things may develop so that disorder occurs. Maybe you can explain this a bit more, because if a premises comes to the point where it's attracting disorder, then I would have thought it would need to be reviewed and maybe lose its license, not just say, okay, you can continue to attract disorder as long as you have somebody on the door. And incidentally, that person on the door here, I guess, would have to be DBS checked, which this doesn't say. Because this does seem to open the possibility that you can have a premises that habitually attracts disorder as long as you have door staff.
Yeah, no, you're right. Actually, it's just kind of put in there as a kind of example of how you can relatively simply put something together. So say, for instance, there is people getting in that shouldn't be, then a member of staff on the door that's permanently on the door will control that. And we can put a condition on the license that insists. So therefore, after that point, that's a compliance issue. If they fail to comply with that condition moving forward, you're right, that becomes a breach and potentially either prosecution or the triggering of a review. So it's just something I think that's been in other policies where they've said, we're going to make you do this. If you can't stop people coming in and that's the only thing that's going wrong, then fine. As you said, if disorder continues, it will be subject to a review.
Okay.
It's kind of a, if you like, a toughening up. Maybe we could reword it. I don't know if we could change the wording to that. It gives businesses, if you like, when they read our policy, they'll see, oh, right, okay, if there is any disorder, and incidentally, none of our premises have a history of any disorder going back years. So I don't know if that makes, that's why we felt if we put it in there, they know we may insist upon that.
Okay, and as I say, presumably, if it was a problem, if a problem starts with children or young people trying to get into adult premises, then the person regulating that would need to be DBS checked.
Yeah, I mean, it could be an instance where, yeah, I guess you could be right. I mean, with door staff,
Yeah, so shouldn't that say, you know, shouldn't it say something about, you know, suitably qualified and regulated door person? I think the wording on this, to me, it's not quite tight enough.
Suitably qualified and regulated, yeah?
Yeah,
I'm with you on that.
You know the wording. I think you know what I mean.
Yeah, I do. I mean, I think, if you like, it was introduced as an additional measure, but certainly we can redo the wording, and I'll add that in, certainly. That's a very good point.
I've got Steve Hillard's got his hand up. I don't know if he wants to interject there.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, my understanding is that door supervisors would have to be SIA registered anyway, so they would in any event be subject to DBS and, you know, have the relevant qualification, etc., etc. So you may just want to refer to them being SIA registered, for example.
Thanks, Steve. Yeah, so I mean, if I put suitably qualified and regulated in brackets SIA registered, that should cover that, shouldn't it? I would think. Thanks.
Okay. Anything else, anybody? Alan, thank you as ever for mammoth work, and Richard, you're extremely efficient at what you do. Well done. Thank you very much. So I think we've only got items 7 left on the agenda, was it? Which is just to, item 8, just to note licensing panels, which we've had a few of. And I think that generally concludes this meeting. Am I correct, Andrew?
Yes, you are correct, Chairman.
Brilliant. Well, thank you all for your input. That's really interesting. Some really good points raised. And it's, we want to keep our people safe. So that's excellent. And it opens our eyes to what's going on. So thank you all very much for attending. I wish you a very happy afternoon, and we'll see you anon. And this meeting is closed at 15:57. Thank you.
Thank you.